Good morning. Hi, how are you? Davi, so good to see you. How are you? How are you? Let me bring this one back as well. No, let me put it up here. Yeah, that's better. I think that works. Yeah. Cool. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay, so I'm trying. Mic is low. Okay, yeah, I can bring it up. Like, really up. Like, that's probably a lot better. Let me check on my phone. Check, check. Let me check my microphone. My microphone. 1, 2. That should be better. I think it should be better. I really pushed it. Yeah, sounds good. Like it's loud enough even on my phone. So that should work. Ah, well, the idea of this is to try to make this every 2 weeks podcast that I had been trying to start in English. And I'm finally getting the discipline to do it. So if it gets like really, really high demand and it gets really successful, I can turn this into a weekly thing. I don't mind it at all. But in the meantime, it will be a every 2 weeks sort of thing. Okay. And I was thinking about talking about very specific topics and then making a little bit of music and sound and have fun with it. But there's a very important, like, that I think we should look into for a moment. Even though I know most of my audience here in English is repair oriented, but the whole idea of this is that it's some sort of podcast where I'm just talking about news across different DAWs, plugins, technologies, music making, and audio technology as well, and music stuff here and there. But Ableton came out with a huge announcement earlier this morning, and it's big. Like, it's super big. So, let's first jump into that one. Like, just into that one. It's way too big. Let's make this thing go here. Yeah, that thing go there. Let me close this one. Yeah. Cool. And everything is closed. I don't need anything else. I'm going to close Discord as well. Yeah, cool. Let's go. Okay, so Ableton Live just released. There you go. For us beta users, the 12.3 update. And this is super, super big news. Like, you have no idea. You have no idea how big this is. And this means that we have now stock or built-in stem separation. We now have bounced, like, I'll show you really quick on Ableton because they already did the announcement, so I'm probably not stepping on anyone's toes. So here's the entry of the blog if you want to check it out. I can link it in the description of the video if you want to snoop around it. But it has a lot of interesting features. Live 12.3. There we go. Save. Okay, now it's in the description. Davi says, lol, made an enemy on Facebook, mentioning at the Gear News that no matter what they include, I won't buy it. Well, that's fine. Like, you don't have to buy it. It's interesting, nevertheless. So the whole idea of the stem separation is that right now you are looking at Live 12.3. Is that, for example, I have this massive sampling folder where I have stuff like this. I'm not going to play it because I will get a copyright strike and I don't want it. But now we have this very simple right-click feature where we just go into, let me resize it for the stream. There we go. Where we just go into separate stems to new audio tracks. And now we have this small window and you decide what you want to get. I say separate. Let me make myself smaller. It's this one. Yeah. And it's going to take like 1 minute maximum, something like that. I know they will use it. I do wonder what people actually will use it for. Which part? The stem separation? For sampling. Like we always use it for sampling. Stuff like I'm doing right now, like you just drag a track that you like. You're trying to take out a drum break out of a track, or you want to do some sort of remix and you just need the vocals for something. And I used to use, once this is done, I'll show you. Okay, so now I have this, but for example, just showing the drums isn't a copyright issue. And why am I not listening to this one? Let me, yeah, I'm playing it that way. Oh, I know why. And let me route that into OBS. That's the one thing I was forgetting. Cool, Ableton Live. There you go. They did say that there's an option that you can add, so it's higher quality separation. But yeah, like it's as easy as that. I love this idea. I love to have it like completely built into the DAW. There were so many attempts at this. I remember using one from 2018, I think from Asuki, that she did. She wrote a code using Splitter, like she did a variation of that, where you could just drag it into a Max device and it output like a certain amount of stems. But like apparently it took them 7 years when you could actually do it 7 years ago. But yeah, that's that. Davi says, let me bring the chat closer to me so I can see it when it's moving. Whoop, there we go. And there we go. And okay, Davi says, I doubt they will use it on their own music. No, most people do. Like, I don't think that's the best idea, but yeah, most people actually do it. Like, they just sample a horn sound and then they reuse it in different ways. Even that open vinyl thing isn't really legal. Like, doing stem separation is legal. Like, that's not an issue. Reusing that material and spreading it across the internet probably isn't. Like, probably that's a different thing, The splice integration for me is super interesting as well. So if we go right here into the Finder, now you will see down below. Let me bring my stream deck a little bit closer. I feel it's too far away. Okay. You will see that now I have a small splice icon right here, right? Yeah, like dialogue from movies, like for a lot of stuff. You have this small splice down here. And there's a really interesting idea behind this. Let me just open a project where I have something. Oh, yeah, I'm using this one. No, wait, I'm using this one. Yeah. Delete. And I like that the fact that they do the stem sampling, it creates another folder inside your Ableton Live project where that is called stems, and that's where it actually draws them into or prints them out. So you don't get a huge mess in the samples folder. Yeah, that's important to keep your library organized. The interesting idea of the splice integration is that now it can look and analyze the tone and timbre of your session, and now it can suggest stuff that's related to it. That's super cool. I kind of thought this could happen when they added the sound similarity search on Live 12. Uh, it sounded like an option for Ableton Live to go, in some way, but like it came so fast that, and like so built in that it's an interesting approach. It's an interesting approach. David says, though, on getting spectral ears to improve things, but just the standard version of Pro. Yeah, like spectral ears is fine, but there's also Ripex though that does that thing very well. Like it's just good to have it built in, like that's the thing probably most of us really wanted. So for example, I have this project right here, and I need to get my headphones probably. I'm starting to build more templates, so I need to freeze that. And that, yeah, that project is really CPU heavy. The things that you have to deal with when you're doing live stream is stuff like this small death time zone. This is what actually making music looks like. Like if anyone is completely new to music making, this is super normal. Sometimes, like Debbie was just sharing on Discord that uh, they were having some issue with licenses and such, and sometimes you just have to waste time trying to get things working again, and then you can go back to making stuff. Yeah, it's just part of the experience of making music. Freezing, cool. Okay, now it should play. Yeah, that baseline is not even close to being done. But what I want to show is the splice similarity feature search. So now I can say search with sound, so I can select a couple of clips, like a range of something. And now we have this super cool feature also announced on 12.3, where I can select this and create a bus of harmony whatsoever. And I can just copy this as time. It doesn't have to be frozen. That's the fantastic side of stuff. And I can just create an audio track and paste it as audio. Like that's super, super interesting. I can just copy this and I can paste bounced audio. And of course, it really depends on how many plugins you have there and how many of them are actually doing something. So now I have this. Like that's a super, super cool idea to just be able to copy a strip of silence, apparently, from the playback, and then like just bounce it or print it into audio without having to mess with the group itself. There you go. Now that should be working better. And okay, so now I have this clip selected, and now I can do search with sound. Logging in to create an account. Yes, that's fine. I'm not logged in yet. Oh, whoopsie. Wait, let me go here for a moment. Give me a moment. Let me set this up really fast. Yeah, I forgot my password. I always forget my passwords. This should be working. Okay, yeah, we're back in business. We're back in business. Cool. So now I have this clip selected and I say search with sound. And it's going to analyze it. It's processing. And now I have a ton of samples that are probably related in key. And remember that for this, I'm guessing you still have to use the bridge splice plugin. This one right here. I should probably not be using such a CPU heavy session for this. So, let me save this one as yeah, let me remove all of those plugins. That's going to really free up my CPU. There we go. Much better. So now here on my splice bridge track, I can now listen to all of these suggestions. Loading again. I have 50 results. Like, it feels like cheating. Like, it really feels like cheating. It's so fast. It's way too fast. Probably these small things about like loading the sample. Oh, and it's not using the Splice Bridge plugin anymore. It has its built-in level right here. This is super cool. What will happen if I told Splice to suggest some drums for this? Like, what would it suggest? Let me check. I'm at 150 BPM, and I don't want to be working at halftime, and I want to be on a range, of, that seems to be working. Save, and now it's loading. So you end up with a small round trip of going into digital and converting like it's not just going into the computer. You have to go into the computer, you have to fake that virtual sound card, and then you can come back out. So it's not latency free. So it works for other stuff, but it's not for no latency monitoring. For that, you will have to use your usual Thunderbolt or USB sound cards. There you go. Because that's something that actually happens when my computer gets way too CPU hungry and I'm using a lot of my RAM. It suddenly like goes out, it dies, because that's one of the processes that's running in the background using RAM. Okay, so I think it should be playing again. Yeah. Well, we get the idea. It's super cool. David says, I used Splice just with their rent-to-own apps, but had some problems with their apps tipping with Loop Cloud. Their new sample flip is pretty cool. Yeah, I had a hard time trying to get used to the whole even loop Splice ecosystem. Like, I didn't like it so much, but now it's here. It's super cool. It's really well done by now. Like, let me just jump through a couple of other things. We finally have the bounce groups and paste audio, like that thing that I just did on the session, where I can just select a group and click bounce in place or bounce audio. There's an update for a device. Let me shut this session down because it's so CPU heavy. Remember that old trick that we used to do with the AutoPan, where you set the phase of left and right channel and you ended up using that as a tremolo? Well, now they updated that device, and now it's an AutoPan / tremolo. So if I'm doing any chord, let me write super fast. Remember that if you're on Ableton Live and you just have your cursor at any place, you can play a couple of keys on your keyboard, hit right on your arrow keys, and it will write those down. There you go. As long as you have this small headphone selected. Now I'm gonna hit legato so it's playing all of the time. And now I'm going to make a small loop so it's a never-ending sound. And I'm going to add, by showing also my device view and collapsing my wavetable, my AutoPan Tremolo new device that's down here. Let's go over there. And now we have these two versions. We have the panning from left to right with a meter of it. Classical rate, we can invert the panning. Attenuation, so you can jump into it. That's super cool. And the modulation of the auto panning. It can be positive or negative. And we can change the shape of it a bit. I would like to have like triangle stuff and other shapes, you know, but like that's fine. It's cool enough. But remember that what we used to do to make a tremolo happen is that we used to set in phase left and right channel, you know. Hey, Ethan, I think I pronounced that one correctly. We used to get this to in phase, and now it's working as a tremolo. But remember that we can also assign this for using something like the expression control. We could use this using assigning our mod wheel and mapping this to the amount. So since we are modulating it, I can now mod it like so, you know. Or we can just have a complete remote control of it using our modulation. And since we can add many things to that modulation wheel, it could be an fancy way of adding expression to our own instruments, because you know that's something I really like doing. Like that's fun, you know, like that's super cool. But now, as I was saying, we have the tremolo version of it. For me, probably the most interesting side of it is that we have this new crossover where we are alternating between the low end and the lower frequencies and the highest frequencies. Let me duplicate this one, turn it off, and change this one into tremolo, and now you can add some interesting effects now. Like that's fun, but for me it's not the biggest update. New and improved tracks. Yeah, I still have to test the new chords pack. Updates for the move and so on. Like I liked most of the new ideas a lot, like so much. You have no idea how much I like them. Uh, it's super interesting. Like they are trying to keep up. They have a small couple of updates on the icons and like small stuff like that. Uh, but it should be interesting. Like yeah, stem separation, bounce groups, paste audio tracks. Oh, the ABF plugins. That's something super cool. Now we can also do this thing. Like this is super cool. Remember how we are always trying to figure out if we are using like the correct setup or setting for something. Now you have, for example, something like this, and you can right click it and compare, switch to B, copy A to B, right? And now the shortcut for this is P. And that's super cool because now I can only hit P and it's going to switch to B mode, right? And the B mode could be a small variation on this EQ, and now whenever I just hit P, this works. One of the things that I was really intrigued by is thinking about what if I have my LA2A, because we will keep on moving, Universal Audio. If you haven't downloaded this plugin, like I honestly think you should download it. The free, for now free, UAD LA2A. We will talk a little bit about it. So let's suppose you have these settings of this gain and this peak reduction. And I was wondering if, yeah, the A to B does not work here. It only works on stock devices. I was thinking it should only be working on stock devices. Let's jump into Reaper and let's keep on working on there. That's the small, huge announcement by Ableton. Like that's a huge update. So if you still haven't downloaded Universal Audio's LA2A, please remember that this is a hardware opto compressor that was designed in the 60s and it was made, I think, from the 65 to the 69, and around 2004 it was introduced into the Hall of Fame of technology. And Teletronics, I think Teletronics was sold to UVI around 86, 84, something like that. And Bill Putnam took over and they just finalized like more or less the idea. And that's why the originals LA2As that you might find are the UVI versions of it. Honestly, I know a compressor is just a compressor, but this design has very specific curves to it. It has a very interesting way of dealing with compression. And even if you're only doing synthy music, like it's a super good idea. It's a super cool instrument to have. So let's make something like super fast. Let me bring my XOXLN. These live streams are going to really put my skills to the test on... Oh no, let's try some UV stuff because I have other news on UV. Let's use... Which one was it? Falcon? Yeah, that's the one I'm trying to get. Where is it? There you go. These live streams are going to put my skills to the test on Reaper for making fast beats and fast music. So I'm going to load this library called devices, libraries, UV. Here we go. I'm going to use the beatbox analogy. Yeah, anthology. There you go. So this is a huge collection of drum machines, you know, like a huge collection of drum machines. Let me just load an analog 707, more or less. And remember that for this one to play, you have to place a MIDI note or a MIDI event at C3. Otherwise, it won't play. Let me check my audio output. There you go. Now I'm listening. So let's just make a really small MIDI clip right here. MIDI clip. And let's just add one single note here and bring it down an octave by using Shift and down. I'm going to pre-listen to my MIDI events. That way I can do fast editing and know what I'm doing. Let me make this one a little bit smaller. Now a little bit smaller. There you go. Oh, there you go. There you go. So now whenever this thing is playing, I haven't fixed that. I have to fix that. I have to listen to one single note so it doesn't play twice. There you go. Okay. And let me just find a small pattern really fast that works for any idea. Let's go into sequences and let's go into, what's this? Yeah, that works. Cool. And now let's jump into Search, because that's a free plugin. If you don't have it, I have a ton of, well, I have like 4 videos on Search, and it's a super interesting plugin. Remember that I also added on Reaper an action that's called rename selected track as first FX. It's part of the RIA pack browse packages. So if you're not using RIA packages, this one is the one that I'm using. Rename extra to name, no, where is it? As first selected track as first FX. That way, whenever I load some plugin, I can just right click here and now it's loaded with the name. I can just hold Shift and C and I change my color, and now I'm going to add this one and make this one my base. And I want to show the LA2A with bass because that's a really interesting concept to understand with optical compression. So I've made a couple of patches right here. Let's check here. Wait, Ableton Live is still playing. Haha. Let me close Ableton Live. Let's go back into Reaper. And yes, I'm using my push with Reaper, also with the Driven by Moss extension. Let me remove my push, detect it again. There you go. And arm my track. And why am I not listening to this? There we go. Chromatic, thank you. D minor. Let's do some D minor stuff. Ooh, that's thick. Let me record a small idea. Is not quite there. Metronome options, let me add a counting before recording. Yeah. There you go. that works. Let's close that one. And using T, I'm going to switch between takes. Holding Shift and T, I will draw back into takes. I will clean this up. And now that's my... Let me add small texture to it. Let's again use Search XT. Yo, Mike! Welcome, Mike! That's the one. That's the guy you want to be friends with. He's such a nice guy. Enjoy your lunch. What are you eating, Mike? Let me draw some keys really fast. Yeah, paths. Remember to always start marking your favorites. You don't need to mark everything as your favorite. Like, you really don't need to. Yeah, this should work. Okay, I have an idea. Let me record that. Okay. Let's close this one. I said let's close this one, unarm the track. Let me split this item. Let me move in a little bit closer in. Yeah, let's split it down here. And let's edit this so it actually starts closer to that. Perfect. There you go. Let me delete this second take. And now I can consolidate or glue these two together. And let's call this path. Okay, so why an optical compressor for your tube, for your bass lines? Okay, the whole idea with tube compression or with optical compression is that please remember to just download it. It's free. It sounds great. The whole idea and the concept that you have to understand with optical compression is that if I just duplicate this bass line and render this to audio, let's render tracks to stereo stem tracks and mute originals. I'm going to move this closer to the beginning of the project because that way I won't have to wait for all of that always. Is that the way the attack and release react to the program, that's how the people in audio call it. It's program dependent. It means that the optical compressor, how it actually works is, wait, I'm in the wrong window. Optical compression is that it has a small lighting detector inside, right? A small optical receiver that reduces the amount of voltage going in as long as it's being stimulated by light. So it could be LED, it could be with an actual tube, it could be in many different ways. Let me see if I can find a circuit. Hardware. So the more voltage or energy that goes into the circuit, the more it will light up, and that's how it's dependent on what you're shoving it in, right? This is the most interesting idea because it's going to also react differently to different frequencies because light bulbs and electricity and light reacts differently to different frequencies. And it's a really interesting concept because then it's going to take some time to load or overload and start compressing. That's why you don't have any mm, that's why you don't have any time parameters at site, you know. And the fact that you don't have them means that it's going to be adapting all of the time to what it's being exposed to as light. And whenever it stops receiving voltage or signal, it's going to start unloading. Have you ever seen a light bulb like just go out or turning off? However, I'm using the best of my English. Uh, as it's dying out slowly, like that's what's slowly lowering down the amount of compression that you're actually doing. That's why it's really, really the way to phrase it. It's program dependent or it's adaptive. It's always adapting to the amount of signal that you're using. And since baselines or since bass is always either way too heavy on some frequencies or is there you go. I'm going to try to make the best demonstration of this, but since it's always varying so much, you can make it have more attack if you actually emphasize the synth with that, or you can flatten it out a little bit or just enough without having to smack completely your drums. So for example, let's make a send from here to here, and let's call this drums print, and let's call this drums print, drums compression, right? So let's use this one, and let's render tracks to stereo tracks and mute originals. Yeah, that's the one I want, because I want to compare the amount of transient that we have, right? I have this amount of transient. If I compress this with the optical compression, right, because it's adaptative, what I will get is something like this. And as you can see, I'm not moving anything right now. I'm very, very subtly, like, where is it? Where is it? I lost it. This one. Let's call this one compressed. There you go. And let's change the color of it. You can see that even the peak level, this is minus 4.5 and this is minus 0.7. And you can see that it's not even the same part of the waveform that's the highest peak. Since the attack is so slow on the optical compressors, because they are the slowest one of their group of compressors, what you will end up having is that you will have a small increase on the attack, and then you will have a very steady way of releasing the content of whatever you're compressing. That's what happens when optical compression does its thing. It's also cutting a little bit of the high end, but that has to do with the limit of the frequency range of the circuit itself or the way it's being stimulated, because it could also be running through the bulb itself, through the tube itself, and that's what causing the cutoff on the frequency range, or it could be just feeding the tube itself, and you have an opto, how are these things called? Photosensitive cells, I think they are called. Yeah, photoreceptor cells, those ones. Photoreceptor cells. No, they're like this. Photo. I'm doing my translation from Spanish to English. I think I have a video right here somewhere. No, how is that thing called? Help me with my English, chat. I see a lot of people on chat. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. It's great to see all of you here. And feel free to ask any questions in the chat. Like, I will answer and I will get to them as soon as possible. How are these things called? Fotoresistencias. I'll look it up in Spanish. So this thing, right? And this detects light, and that's what tells the circuit how much to compress and by how much according to whatever you have plugged into it. So optical compressor on basslines is a fantastic idea. Like, you have no idea why is it so cool. I'm still having open my Falcon. Cool. I have my bassline. I have my clean bassline. Let me render it again so I'm not getting confused. Let me render to stereo multitrack. This is with the UAD on. So this one is with the LA2A. And let me print one without the compression. Render to stereo stem tracks. This is a clean print, right? Let's do it like that. Let me change the colors. And I'm going to zoom into the waveform a little bit by holding Shift and clicking up on my keyboard. Let me change a little bit the color so it's easier to look at. And there we have a much better view. So if I check the peaks again, and I see the low end content information that I can see on the waveform itself, I can see how the low frequencies are driving the waveform. That's because the biggest movement, that's also part of what we can call eventually amplitude modulation, because lower frequencies can do that. That's why we see this big waveform going on, right? Like this long movement. That's the low frequencies moving on. And then we have these higher frequencies moving and being carried across like the whole waveform. So the clean version is not even as loud. Let me match them using the normalized media items features built into Reaper. So we have a much fairer comparison of transient material, right? In this peak right here, I see that I'm getting minus 25 and I'm getting minus 20. So it's 5 dB of compression. That's almost invisible. Let's compare it against the drums. Please remember that whenever you're trying to do comparisons by listening to stuff, you have to do some sort of context, musical context. Otherwise, you won't listen to compression, because you have to know, or you have to be able to listen how much is stuff getting held down or pushed up or standing out or poking out of your mix, right? Or whatever your material is. So I'm going to play the clean version of the bass, and then we will play the LA2A version of the mix and pay a lot of attention to the transient material. What I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the attack a lot more. Well, the cutoff is way too close. Probably that's getting a little bit in the way. Let me unmute this one. Yeah, let's do it like that, like with a much more open filter. Let's reprint those two with just a much higher filter. Render to stereo. Cool. Unmute. Compression. I'm going to name this one clean. Always name your tracks. That's the easiest way to get stuff out of control. Okay. And this is going to be LA2A. I'm going to select both of them, and let's jump into a new color, and let's normalize both of them. There we go. And okay, let's play it again. And and now the LA2A version. Let's again look a little bit into it. If I hit like only this section against the clean one, it's like just enough of how contained it is. Like that's the thing I love the most. If we also check something, or we can just keep on analyzing and overthinking this, and we can move on after this small example, is that we can also use the version of peak display settings, also built into Reaper, where we can use the momentary, let's use the momentary one. Oh, it's way too low. Let me bring this a lot higher. Let me bring this to -9. And it's just so I can see the curve, right? That's the only thing I'm trying to look at. No, which one was with the curve? I forgot what it is. Oh, here it is, the graph. That's the one I'm looking for. Yeah. Okay, so remember that if you're trying to use LUFS to make some small decisions or comparisons, in this case, this might work because you can see how some small jumps or increases in level are actually affecting the feeling of loudness. In the case of compression, for me, it's kind of interesting because if I check these two drum stems that I did, one compressed, the bottom one compressed. Let me unmute both of them and let me set them to the same color. There you go. If I'm only checking the dynamic range of them and the perceived loudness of both of them, I can see that the compressed one even has a little bit more dynamics. So the idea of compression is not to flatten things out, is to manipulate the dynamics across time. So we decide what we are doing with the peaks, or with the transients, or the sustain, or the decay of our material. That's what we are trying to do and figure out with compression. So if you don't have still like the free version or the now free version of the LA2A, like just go download it. It's free for now. Please just get it. Just get it. It's going to sound great. Try it out just enough on bass lines. It could cut a little bit of your low end, so be careful with it. Try to get the needle always just moving around, like that's what you want. It doesn't have to be stuck necessarily for some uses. If you're using it on vocals and you're using as a parallel compression, like it can be smacked, that's fine, but try to figure out what or how is it modifying the sound and the transient or the envelope of your vocals, and see how does that fit within what you're doing, and have fun with it. Like just have fun with it. Read a lot about where it was used, how it was used, and you will learn a lot about it. Okay, another freebie that was just a news for everyone was the Analog Lab Play by Arturia. Okay, this thing is free. Also, this ring is free. If you're looking for instruments so you can make music, go into Arturia, make an account, and it has 100 essential hard-hitting blah, 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 blah. Cool, like that's free and all. The idea of having this sort of plugins or devices that have a ton of software built in is that, let's suppose we're not using this baseline. Let's suppose we have another one, and there's something that you still have to keep in mind. For example, most people, when they are using Analog Lab, they say it's so CPU hungry. It's CPU hungry because it's loading a ton of libraries, a ton of virtual instruments. And that's why, why is it not there? Analog Lab. This one? Oh, probably I have to use the 5 one, not the 4 one. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't checked my Arturia library, like the software. So the thing is that people, more often than not, I see that they complain about the CPU usage, and I agree on some plugins like Pigments. It can be so hungry on the CPU, but if you're using something like Analog Lab that has a huge indexing to do because it's scrolling across all of the plugins that are the Jupyter, the mini version of mini Moog version of it, the Prophet, and every single one of them. Of course, it's going to be CPU hungry. No, but this is just wrong. It shouldn't be taking this long. Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Let me change back my pick and Analog Lab. Can you just load it, please? Like, is that too much to ask? Same goes for others like Cube from Lunacy. I haven't used that one. Here it is. See? I have to disable. Let me show you. If you haven't disabled the search of some plugins that you don't want to appear on your FX search, you can go down into plugins. Where was it? Plugins, here. And you can add this command that's called not, and then you can just add the name like so. So not Analog Lab 4, and I apply this, and I rescan, and I think this should be working. No, I disabled the 5 one. Well, I'll do it offline, not during stream. Apply, rescan. There you go. The thing is, this is ready. So the idea of these kind of plugins that are like just making music plugins in a very straightforward kind of way is that you have pretty much all of the Arturia collection at hand. And that's what you're looking at. It's not that the Analog Lab is super powerful. It's that it's containing in its own architecture all of the plugins, so you can more or less scroll in all of the Arturia library. That's why it's so heavy. That's why you shouldn't be complaining about why is it heavy, because it's pretty much scrolling on every single plugin that Arturia has. And that's why it can be slow, right? So maybe you're trying to do this old 70s sounding, where is it? 70s sounding strings, and you want to use the Mellotron. So you just go into the Mellotron and you go and use the chamber strings. Let me jump again into chromatic mode. There you go. Change scale. The play should be faster, as you don't use. What do you mean by the play should be faster? I'm just playing around with the sound. I'm trying to figure out like some chords. Okay. As play is just a preset player like UVI Workstation or yeah, it should be a little bit faster, or it could be a little bit faster. And that's what we're hoping, because the thing is that you will probably only get access to this and you won't be able to modify too much of the plugin itself. But these sort of like just play plugins, like they just work, you know? Like it's simple to have a couple of macros that help you get expression into your sound and into your music. And that's like, I think that's the whole point that we have to keep in mind, you know, like that's the only thing that we have to keep in mind, that they're only trying to be plugins that have a couple of macros that you can just start playing with one hand and play a couple of chords and then replay and record the automation. So it's fast. And if you are skilled enough, then you can do both of the things at the same time. So I don't know why is it not reflecting here, but yeah, like it's working from the macros on my push. Like everything's working here. And now it's stuck. I don't know why. Probably read some sustain pedal sort of thing. So yeah, Analog Lab also released this free thing that we should be looking into. But on that same tone, I want to give us another shout out to UV. Where is it? I think I have this one right here. Oh, this one. The Relayer. Multi-tap delay with per tap modulation. It's free with every purchase at Plugin Boutique. So my tip would be that first of all, if you want to buy something on Plugin Boutique, you can use my affiliate link if you want to. I'll link it in the description. Let me add it to the description of the video so it's like that. And Stream Deck is great for these sort of things. Now it's added. Cool. So my suggestion is that there's always a $5 plugin or less that could be worth it. And if it's not too worth it, the actual plugin that you're trying to get is the one worth it. So just explore the deal section, look for some plugin that you might like, you know, get it, and like just like that. I want to talk a little bit about the Relayer multi-tap delay because I love the idea of multi-tapping delays and doing stuff. There's a plugin in Reaper. Let me bring this one down here. I'm using them as Sense. Rename as Effects. Which one was the one that I was using? Was it a JS plugin? If you're not using the Toucan delay machine, you could try also that one out. It also works really well. No, this is not it. Which plugin was it? I remember using it for a recent video, like last week or 2 weeks. No, this is not it. I don't remember which one was it. Nope. The new one. Do you remember how is it called? This one, the matrix delay, maybe? I know there's a built-in one that you can use. I don't remember which one it is, but I know there's one. So the thing with multi-taps is that you're adding a certain amount of repetitions that will have each its own parameters. Yeah, it's the same concept. Like you have 4 delay lines where you can do different things to each repetition. I have talked plenty about this on many of my videos in different ways. So the whole idea is that you could have, if we built one, let's change this sound into a pluck. Let's go into Search XC. Let me just add like one single note right here. Yeah, that works. That's horrible, but that works. Let me change that into a pluck. There you go. Okay. If we were going to build something of that sort, I'm going to create a send, I'm going to create a send, I'm going to create a send. Rename. And rename. And I'm going to create delay 1, let's call it that, 2 and 3. Let's duplicate this. Let's call this 2, let's call this 1, 3. And let's group all of this delay line, right? So the whole idea is that this node is being sent into these 3 tracks, different tracks, and you can do different things to each and every single one of them. Pretty much the whole idea is that you have, or you could have some sort of EQ, you could have some sort of saturation, you could have some sort of modulation, again, built in. The fun thing with building your own delay lines is that you can end up doing some really crazy FX chains that eventually will match and make stuff work, right? And let's copy and paste this chain. Perfect. All of this, so it's clear, are going to be one single delay line. Cool. And they are all going out through here. And I can pan this delay to the left, this one to the right, and I can play with the tempo of the delay. So for example, I may want to have something like this. I'm going to create something strange. I don't know what will happen. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. Like I'm just going to go into random territory and have fun with it. There you go. Let's load, like let's just pick a lot of patches from a ton of stuff and see what happens. Mix, yeah, this works. Is it synced? No, now it's synced. There you go. M saturator. Yeah, like that's fine. I'm just trying to add a little bit of saturation. That's fine. And here I'm going to add another delay that's going to be, yeah, tungsten. I think this one is free. Yeah, this one is free. I don't know, like I'll move some stuff. Yeah, and I'm going to make it reverse. So the idea of the delay lines with something like the relayer is that you have one single interface for moving all of the parameters, and for example, the level of all of the repetitions. You can change the panning, you can change the amount of effects that you have at hand, that you can be 1 or 2, and you can start sending those, and it's part of one single ecosystem or user interface. And that works super cool. Like that's the whole idea. Like it works, it simply works. And usually you want to do stuff to your delays. I just did a video on combining delays, and I highly suggest you go check it out. It can probably give you some extra perspective on some stuff. And I had built a small preset here that's low pass, high pass. I don't remember why I can't see it. So through my auxiliary of delay lines, I will have all of my delays just filtered out. If I make this longer, of these ones a little bit here. Let me adjust this really fast. Like the whole idea of just building your own delay lines is that you can do this. Of course, it's CPU hungry, and sometimes you just want to use a plugin that has all of that built into it with some interesting versions of it. So you have something like And for example, a plugin like this, if you are doing some dub stuff, like it's going to get you right there super fast. Like it's that sound just built into it. Those are some of the topics that I wanted to touch today, that I wanted to like just brush up as a small warm up of this every 2 weeks podcast. I hope you find these topics interesting. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, please remember that you can always leave them in the comments if you're watching this as a replay. I'm happy to always help you with anything that I can, and whenever I have like the small extra time to actually get to it. If you like this kind of presenting the material, go into my channel. I have a ton of videos on listening stuff, doing things with Reaper, bigger workflow videos, and like just enjoy the process of making music and exploration just because you can. There are certain moments for different things. Sometimes you can do sound design sessions. Sometimes you can do audio sessions. Sometimes you will have to do mixing and stuff. But if this is just a hobby, then have fun with it. There's nothing else to like really get to. Like just enjoy the process. If you're trying to make a living out of this, then you probably have to get like your basics really, really, really grounded. Like you really have to understand why you're making stuff, what's the sound of stuff, how one thing affects the other. So just stay on top of your own game. Without anything else to say, if there's nothing else in the chat, Davi, thanks a lot for staying for pretty much all of the stream. Like I really, really appreciate it. Also, Mike, that was around for a little moment, Ethan, that was around for a little while, and for everyone else that jumped into the chat, that just came in and out or whatever reason. Like, thanks for stopping by. Let's stay in touch and hit that notification bell because this week video is already uploaded, and I'm going to show you how to do an MV2 without using an MV2 because I probably won't be using waves anytime soon. So, have a nice rest of the week. Let's talk soon. Stay in touch, stay cool, and most of all, thanks for listening.